Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks to one of our cosplay friends, I got some motivation to finish the Jawa mask and the Jawa costume in general. All I've got left to do is boots. The reason that I went with this particular mask is it comes up high enough on the forehead to give the hood a little bit of support and cover my face and head. It comes far enough around on the sides that you can't see my skin, particularly once I have the veil on, and it doesn't touch my face. I played with a lot of the original other masks, the hockey masks and stuff like that, and they rested it right up against my face, and even with cushions and stuff like that, I wasn't comfortable. This one doesn't actually touch my face anywhere but on my forehead. Hopefully, once I get a cooling system down, it'll make the whole costume a little bit cooler. The black veil is real thin and light with the hood on. It doesn't allow anybody to see anything. It actually does a really, really good job of covering it. The lights on the eyes are really easy to change the batteries and turn off and on from inside the mask. So altogether, a fairly low maintenance, fairly easy to put on and adjust solution, in my opinion, which is kind of what I was looking for.
As I mentioned in the intro, I tried a couple of different other masks. I used this cardboardish thing I got from Michael's, coated in plastic dip, and then I tried the typical Halloween-style hockey masks. I wasn't happy with any of them. There were just things I didn't like about any of them. The cardboard one was too flimsy, the other one was too curvy, it's hard to get the eyes to sit straight, so eventually I 3D printed a Jedi guard mask, and I used pretty rough settings because it's going to be hidden, so I wasn't really all that worried about it, save a little bit of filament. Sanded it down some semblance of smooth. I also created my own little 3D printed eye sockets. My original plan was to mount those on the surface, so I made them angled so that they would sit straight when they were glued on the mask, but eventually I ended up thinking that I was going to set them inside the mask, and they would be a little more sunken so they'd protrude less. So I drilled holes in the bottom to run the wires through, and then in the mask I drilled pilot holes, and using a hole saw I cut out a hole just big enough to actually sink the 3D printed sockets inside the mask just a little bit so that they were flush on the inside. So as it turns out, the time I spent in SketchUp to get the little angle on the bottom of the eye sockets wasn't necessary, but it let them sit flush on the inside of the masks so they didn't protrude, but still gave me lots of material to glue to. I ran a bit of super glue around the outside of the eyes and it seeped down in between the material and glued them, and then I did the same thing on the inside. Once everything was glued together, I gave it quite a few coats of a black plasti dip just so that the mask was black. When I first printed it, I was too lazy to change the filament color and I wasn't really sure it was going to work, so I left it gray when I printed it. I then drilled holes in both sides around the temple area, at the top of the head, and in the front of the mouth and the nose to allow a little bit of airflow. Eventually I'm going to open these up even a little bit more, I think. I then set snaps in both temples and forehead area to attach the elastic strap. In retrospect, I probably should have used Chicago screws. I then began disassembling the light base that came in the little floating globes that I got from Hobby Lobby. I have a set of diffused LEDs that don't shine quite as brightly. They're a little bit soft, so they glow instead of protrude the light. I drilled the base out so the LEDs could fit through, and then ran wires through the eye sockets and the back of the mask. And these wires hold the same size batteries, two of the same size batteries that come in the lights originally anyways, and they've got an on-off switch. So instead of having to try and turn the bezels, I can just flip a little switch to turn them off. Once I had everything soldered together, gave it a test fit. The lenses kind of sit right on top of the eye sockets, and then I was just planning on hot gluing them in. I then sliced up some Velcro so that I can fasten in the pads for the mask at the forehead, and both battery packs are held in with little pieces of Velcro. That way I can pull them off to change the batteries a little easier. For the neck seal, my wife started with a just standard black piece of fabric that was doubled over, sewn along the edges, and then turned inside out.
I can watch the line.
She then sewed the outside edge closed and sewed some long lines just to kind of jazz it up a little bit and give it a little bit more body. And then a piece of Velcro around each end so that it can Velcro around at the back of the neck. She then took a couple really short pieces of real thin elastic and sewed the ends closed, and then she sewed those into the slits that we made in the veil to make it so that the veil would pull around the eye sockets, just to keep things from tearing when the material gets a little weak and frayed, but to also help it hold better to the eye sockets. This actually ended up being a little more burdensome than we expected. Somebody that had the appropriate buttonhole or something like that on a sewing machine probably do the same thing a lot easier. We then put the veil over top of the mask and pinned everything in place and set up some Velcro on the veil so that it would hold to the straps. That way it's also removable if for some reason we have to remove it and or remake it. Took a little bit of getting it all pinned up so that it held to the face relatively tight and conforming, and didn't have a lot of wrinkles in the face. But with everything on and the neck seal in place, it actually lays pretty flat and smooth. And for the eyes, we took the globes that came with the lights and scuffed them up real good on the inside with some Scotch-Brite to both diffuse them a little bit and give the paint something. And then I filled them up with a couple of squirts of a satin, just plastic type paint. Kind of swirled them around a little bit to give them a coating and then left them to dry. Tried not to put too much in there because you don't want them too dark. And then I sprayed the outside of them as well with a kind of a light coat again. We're still doing some experimenting. One of the things that we're trying is diffusing the lights a little bit better. I tore up some wax paper, stuck it inside, and used that to help diffuse the lights a little bit. Didn't work out quite as well as I was hoping it was going to. I may just add more wax paper.
I've still got some stuff to do. I've got a lot of weathering to do. I'm going to go through and darken the snaps and fasteners on bandoliers and on the mask. And then, of course, I've got the same weathering to do on the robe and the boots when I finish them. Gloves, etc., stuff like that. Just the generic weathering that most of the Jawas are going to have to do. But so, anyways, I will see you next week. Have a great weekend.